Alright, we are recording, so this video is going to be a little different than some of the previous ones. Unfortunately, no real notes or scripts. It'll make sense in a moment. But this is kind of a real science follow-up on one of the science fiction focused videos I did a few weeks ago. The Manufacturing Materials 3, I believe it was. Where I talked about how in a lot of science fiction you see them basically just adding elements to the periodic table, even though that doesn't make any sense because everything past lead has no stable isotope, and as you get heavier and heavier, they tend to get less and less stable. But there is the prediction of what's called the island of stability, where at certain super heavy elements, you can have a configuration of protons and neutrons that actually will be stable. Well, or more stable, less unstable. So maybe instead of having half-lives in seconds, if that, it's more like microseconds in some cases, might be longer and make actually some use. We'll see. We'll see if we ever get there. But, yeah, I wanted to do this video because this week for me, and you can see the date right here, July 23rd, 2024 is when this came out, Berkeley Lab, I don't remember what the full name for Berkeley Lab is, but if you look at Berkeley Lab, you'll find it. It's one of the United States' Department of Energy research facilities, and yes, it is in Berkeley, California. They came up with this, which is really neat. As it says there, a new way to make element to 116 opens the door to heavier elements. So the way we synthesize heavy elements, and it does specifically mention, I'll be scrolling down and skipping through. This is my notes. That's why I don't have those. And I'm also just, this is really cool. How we've done it previously is with an ion beam of calcium-48, so an isotope of calcium. And yes, it is an ion beam because then you can control an ion beam with magnets. So yeah, it's a beam of that isotope that we aim at some target that it does describe for what they did. It's paper thin for various reasons, but you would aim it at that, and then you hope that what happens. And there's a diagram. I just don't want to get there yet because it's showing what they're doing that's new, and I want to cover what's old first. The hope is that you have the calcium beam in here. I'll make it like this, and when it hits, the hope is that it, meshes together with the atomic nuclei of the target, which would be a much heavier element, and you get fusion and gives you the heavier element. But it's also possible that it will hit and basically just go off, that there is enough energy for anything to happen, or it just goes right through and that it shatters it, in which case you pumped in too much energy. So you need to tune it in there, and part of the reason I mention that is these things are not easy to make. New elements are very hard to make because you've got to actually hit the target. Atoms are more empty space than mass. Then is it mass? Anyway, so it's to even hit one is hard, but then you have to hit it at just right energy and all that. They were testing, I think they said for 22 days only made 2 atoms. 2. For 22 days. And they're expecting, they want to use this to go up to heavier atoms, heavier elements. They could be years to make a few of those atoms. So it's, yeah, very small quantities, which was kind of also my point of the video, that we're already talking about some of the most energetic events in the universe to just get you to uranium, which is 92? Want to check? Yes, uranium is 92. And we're talking about, in science fiction, elements that would potentially be 120 or so. Or actually even higher, 124. I don't quite remember where island of stability is. Where it's predicted to be, but it's you want to make that big a leap? Okay, maybe they're made, but there's not going to be much of it because that takes a lot of energy. But anyway, coming back to this. What they have done is instead of using calcium-48, which it does mention in here, is a magic number. Calcium-48 is a magic number, which it is more stable. I have a feeling that when they're talking about the magic number there, it's more so, it's the number of protons and neutrons it has that it will add if fusion is successful should make the result more stable. But what they have done for this research is they changed it to titanium-50. So we can see this diagram here, which is what they did. This is, I said, they did new stuff. The diagram is showing that. I wanted to cover the old stuff first. So at a beam of titanium-50, which is 22 protons, 28 neutrons. So titanium is 2 above calcium, same number of neutrons as the calcium-48. So they've just made it heavier, went to a new element. So they're contributing more protons, which, remembering our high school, even middle school chemistry, number of protons determines what element it is. Okay, now, what they did is they took titanium-50, and as this diagram shows, they shot it at a target of plutonium-244. And if fusion does occur, as I said, I'm just looking to see, is that actually, it is not also in this view. Sorry. That's right. Oh no, it doesn't. During 22 days of operations at the lab's heavy ion accelerator, the 88-inch cyclotron, making an atom, the team made 2 atoms from that, of element 116. 22 days! 2 atoms. Very rare for this to happen. But it succeeded in making those 2 atoms of element 116, which is livermorium, which I find a little amusing because that's named for Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, which is also part of the DOE's laboratories in the United States, like Berkeley, but obviously it's not Berkeley. There is actually a Berkeleyrium. Berkeley, hang on. Berkeley. I got a speech impediment already. It's got a E in just the wrong spot, I'm not sure. But that's 97. And that's actually not even named for Berkeley Lab. The work here, let me check on. I have the Jefferson Lab, its elemental page up, which is pretty nice. It's named that because it was produced at the University of California, Berkeley, which I know that I remember when I've seen research stuff before, press releases and such, that they and Berkeley Lab do certainly work together. But anyway, I found that a little amusing. But yeah, so they produced livermorium, 2 atoms of this. But what's significant is they confirmed that titanium-50, which is not apparently a magic number, it's viable, that you can do that. And titanium-50, it's heavier. It has those 2 extra protons. So we've gone all the way up to 118 before using calcium-48. That's mentioned somewhere up here. At least I think it is. Hang on. Let me go back to, it's easier to see in my browser. Oh, no. Scrolling down. Have to go down. Until now, elements 114 to 118. 118 is the heaviest yet synthesized. Had only ever been made with calcium-48, which has a special or magic configuration of neutrons and protons. I do want to add one thing that I find a little funny about this, and why I said it must be that it's special for the addition for when you go through with the fusion, because the JLab, the Jefferson Lab information, does actually say that it does have isotope information. So for calcium-48 has a half-life of greater than 5.8 times 10 to the 22 years. Effectively, it's stable, but technically it does decay. It is not actually stable. It's just, that'll take a long time for half of it to go away. Here's what I find curious. Isotope information for titanium, titanium-50 is also stable. It is just labeled as stable, so it doesn't even have a half-life, so it would seem that is also a magic number, but I'm guessing it's just the addition is where you really care. It's also far more common than calcium-48. Natural abundance. Okay, that's true. Natural abundance is 5% of all titanium is titanium-50, whereas only 0.18%, 0.18% of calcium is calcium-48, which if there's a lot more calcium, then there might be more. But it actually does seem weird. It makes it seem like titanium would make more sense to start with, unless it is, as I'm speculating here, that when they're referring to a magic number, they're referring to the addition being there. And yeah, using a non-magic beam such as titanium-50. So it's not magic for the isotope, it's magic for the addition. Okay. Brain is resetting, trying to refocus down to what it is that they've accomplished here. As we do see here, titanium-50 plus plutonium-244, because of 22 and 94 protons together, if you have fusion occur, that's 116 protons. Okay, livermorium. Already made that one. But we want to get heavier than that. Well, if we go 2 more elements up, hang on, let me just try to pull that. So instead of using plutonium, if we went up to curium, which is 96, that would get us to 118, which is currently the heaviest synthesized. But they want to go past that. They want to go to 120. So for that, they have another version of this graph. We'll just go to it. They want to work with californium-249 with 98 protons. 98 plus 22, as it shows there, would get us to element 120, which is fairly interesting. I'm going back up to here, because that is not only just on the next row of the periodic table, which we don't know anything about because we haven't gotten there yet, but it does skip over 119. I'm a little curious why they would go to 120 instead of trying to go to 119, but it could just be that, here, going back to, californium, 249, was before californium is, oh, that's actually kind of funny, it's berkelium. But maybe it suggests that berkelium is much harder to work with, and it does actually mention in the article that, hey, I'm just trying to pull up the isotope data. Californium is basically the heaviest californium-249 is basically the heaviest isotope you're going to want to work with for a target, because going above that, the half-life, the stability is so low, the target will just decay and be kind of worthless. But here, let's actually see. Okay, yeah, the half-life of californium-249 is 351 years. Which 251 has an 898 half-life. That's the only one that's longer. Maybe that's just harder to make, so they don't want to use that. I mean, it's possible. Very reasonable. Yeah, and let me just see for berkelium. Well, there's one berkelium-247 is 1,380 years. So I guess in theory, if you could manufacture that you could use that. Don't know. So maybe that'll be a path they'll try using for getting to 119. But in any case, this is really neat, because by changing the beam, it is opening up the possibility of getting to something like 120. Now, unfortunately, because they do describe in here, I'm not sure where it is, that you can't really go above californium for a target, or at least not above californium-249, you'd have to then move up the periodic table for the, my brain just turned off a little bit, you'd have to move up the periodic table for the beam in order to get to the heavier elements, which, if they were uncertain about titanium, I mean, if you go up 2 more, I'm not sure why they did a jump of 2, let's assume there's a reason for it. 20 titanium is 22, 24 is chromium, I believe, yes? What do we got for isotope data here? Well, hang on, it's 24. So if we assume that, well, no, it's just be 24 and the 28 then. So yeah, that would be 52, right? Yeah, that's 52. That actually is stable. Oh, wow, that's actually the most common chromium. Huh. So I wonder if they will try to that then. Why aren't they just going there straight away? It could also be that because you're adding in the protons, so you are adding mass, which means that you're adding energy to it. It could be that it's just much harder to work at those energy levels, or work at them reliably. Yeah, actually, that would do it, because that means you're also using, like how I did before, that you're using, instead of something this big, you're going to this big and then this big, and it's like that might get harder to properly aim. So it could be that, but it still is. This is a major step to potentially getting to element 120. But as is pointed out just below this image, the timing is yet to be determined, but researchers could potentially begin the attempt in 2025. Once started, it could take several years to see just a few atoms of element 120 if it appears at all. Yeah. So no guarantees here, but it still is. This is neat. I like this. I like the science. Now, true, this is not going to be does this mean you'll use, these super heavy elements and just decide that they're stable in science fiction? No. Because it still is, it's like few atoms in years. No, I don't think that it would ever be viable to see large quantities of this. Yeah, I mean, unless the only way I could see that happening would be if you somehow manage to, and this is pure science fiction, if you somehow manage to cause and manipulate a neutron star merger so that, because that's where you get up to uranium made, I could potentially see that as the only path in science fiction. But it's like, so you're going to try to manipulate two of the densest objects in the universe so they hit each other at just the right speed, just the right angle, so they have just the right interaction at a subnucleonic level, not even subatomic, but subnucleonic level to produce this shit. And when it goes boom, because it will go boom, that then you're still far enough away, but you can come in and get what you're looking for. Nope. I mean, it's like, no. I still don't think that any of these are practical, but it's still a very fascinating idea. And just for my own for my own satisfaction, when I was thinking about it, what would an element 120 be useful for? Even if it is, and I think it needs to go a bit higher before it gets to the island of stability. Even if we got there, what would we use it for if we could make it? And even, let's say a gram, let's say 1 gram of it, which would be a lot of atoms. It's been a while since I've done that math, but Avogadro's number would be in there, okay? That's a big number, okay? But yeah, it's been a while since I've done that, but yeah, it's... Even if you had that much, my guess is it won't be stable. The island of stability will be more stable, but it might be more stable like uranium is more stable than plutonium. In that, oh yeah, it's still decaying, but it's not necessarily going to do so quickly. I'm just trying to figure out, this seems to be... What is the... Okay, I'm not sure what the thing is showing there. Here, I'll just leave my arm to cover it so I don't have to see it. My guess would be the only realistic use for it, aside from some very exotic chemistry, if it were more stable, would be for use in, like, as a fissile material. Which, in theory, it could actually have a higher energy density in that capacity than uranium. So it could be useful there, but it's still, I don't think 1 gram of it would produce that much energy. It would be more than a gram of uranium. But it's like, you know, what would you do except, like, put that in a probe? Like, use that for a Voyager 3, or what was it in Star Trek? Which one was it for? What was Voyager? Was it like Voyager 12 or something? Maybe you could power one of those for much longer, or just have it use more power than current Voyagers. But it's... No, I don't think there would be much practical use, but it still is, you know, worth investigating. Worth trying to figure out. Plus, if it is more stable, like on the order of californium, and you can make some, then you can use that as a target to go to even heavier elements, heavier atoms. And all of this allowing you to learn more and more about the... yeah, I'm just going to scroll up so we can get the title of it again. And I keep doing this. I do something where it's like, oh, good idea, do that, and then I get distracted. It still is worth doing this because it will give us more information about how the physics of nucleons, the nucleus of atoms, and the nucleonic particles within them will give us more information how those all work. So, I mean, yeah, it's good to do. And by the way, for anyone wondering, because this is an election season, it may come up the concept of basic science. This would be considered basic science. No, this isn't basic in that it's simple, but basic in that this is something that doesn't necessarily have any practical benefit, but it is still something that is worth doing, that we're doing it for science, essentially. You may see that come up because there might be discussion about budgets and how much should be dedicated to basic science and not. Another way to look at it is this: a corporation typically wouldn't fund basic science. That's why governments fairly often do, because it can't benefit a corporate entity, a corporation, at least not easily. But governments, with the power to tax, better or worse, they can fund such things. So it's, yeah. Just to explain, if you do see something called, you know, referring to basic science in the context of budgeting, this is exactly the kind of thing that would be considered basic science, because it is just for the service of science. Anyway, that should be more than enough talking. As I said, I will have the link to this in the description. And I did think it was a good article, by the way. I did enjoy reading it. I've seen some articles that are really poorly written, including of late. But this one I actually did kind of like. So yeah, if you want to look it up, just check in the description. You will see it there, or you, in theory, can just check out Berkeley. If you do search for Berkeley Lab, I'm just bringing it up in my main browser just to see it actually. Well, for now, but this will be in a couple weeks probably. This is the top thing, but you can get to news, Berkeley Lab, get a little drop down thing, news, and you can see what other things they've been doing. It is pretty neat. Yeah. Anyway, see you next time.